Welcome back to episode 5 of Cleveland Sports Realm. It's good to be back with everybody. Hope everybody had a wonderful holiday, Thanksgiving weekend, fun Black Friday shopping. But over all that time period, there was a lot that happened in sports. So Kevin and I are back here to break it all down. Kevin, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, buddy. How are you?
I'm hanging in there. Cannot complain. So let's get right into it. First of all, let's dive right into the Browns Monday Night Football game because I think we both have a lot to say about this one. Absolutely. So let's start. Browns lose a very thrilling game, 41-32. Jerry Jeudy career best game, and overall, I couldn't believe a lot of athletes have ran their mouths and stuff about, revenge games and things of that nature. I've never seen a Browns player back it up like Jerry Jeudy did on Monday night. That was awesome.
Yeah, it was awesome to see. It really was. Especially, I know you had said, I didn't see it before the game, but apparently he had said something about not even wanting to be in Denver or trying to request his way out of Denver, which was kind of news to us because we basically, it seemed like Jerry Jeudy had been on the trade block, or there had just been at least talks of him potentially being traded for a couple of years, and the Browns had been in those talks, and then all of a sudden the trade happened, but I'd never heard anything about him demanding or requesting to be out of Denver. So the fact that he kind of came out before the game and said that definitely was trying to spark a fire under the Denver fan base. I think he kind of wanted to go in there and get the boos. That's what it seemed like to me. And I mean, I have not seen, to your point, I haven't seen a Browns player go out, or really any player for that matter, go out, talk the trash before the game, and then go and back it up. I mean, he had a top 3, top 4 receiving performance in Browns history in Denver. It was phenomenal to see, and I think he solidified himself as, Alex and I had talked last week about whether or not he's a wide receiver 1 or whether he's a wide receiver 2, and I think you can have that debate still. But he went out there and basically said, I'm a wide receiver 1. You got to put your best corner on me. And that would be Pat Surtain, one of the best corners in the game, and he still got the best of him from time to time.
Yeah, he did, and he absolutely torched Levi Wallace. That guy had a miserable, miserable night. But continuing to talk about Jeudy, like you said, he absolutely backed it up. He said, quote, I want to whoop their ass. And the Browns didn't win, but he sure as hell whooped their ass, for sure. And the other thing there, too, is, like you said, I think he enjoyed playing into it. And sometimes athletes like to play that role because all night he was encouraging the boos, bringing it on, hand to the ear, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, the Hulk Hogan, hand to the ear. Yep.
It was a lot of fun to see. But the thing that it inspires me is since Jerry Jeudy's gotten a chance to play with a real quarterback, didn't get a chance to play with an NFL quarterback first few weeks of the season. So once he finally got an NFL caliber quarterback, I mean, this guy's played like a wide receiver 1. I saw that he is now in top 5 receiving yards. So I think he's answering the question to your question, if he's a 1 or 2. I think that debate is being settled as we see him get the chance to play with a real quarterback and not the worst quarterback in Browns history.
Yeah. To your point, as Jameis has stepped into the QB1 role, I think Jerry Jeudy, if I were to guess, was probably, now I haven't looked up the stats, but if I were to guess, he was probably a top 15 in terms of yardage receiver in the NFL, if I were to guess, as Winston took over the role. But this put him, as you just said, he's top 5, top 6 in the league right now. And it didn't really look like, outside of Njoku from time to time, which those were more so, 7-8 yard plays or red zone targets, Jameis wasn't really targeting anybody else, it seemed like.
Well, I thought Jameis did a good job actually getting Elijah Moore involved a lot too.
Yeah, that's a
great Elijah
point.
Moore did break his streak of getting his first 100-yard game as a Brown. And you look at all these guys, whether it's been Elijah Moore, David Njoku, or Jerry Jeudy, they're all real weapons. And basically what they're telling you without telling you is we just needed a quarterback who could get us the football. And now look at them. They're putting up big numbers week in and week out.
Yeah, and even Chubb's getting more involved in the passing game. That's something we haven't seen too much out of him this year. And even, granted, very, very small sample size last year. Didn't see it a ton last year. That's been more so Jerome Ford's role. And, Chubb's getting more involved. Jerome Ford, by the way, is putting together some very tough runs. Like, even when he gets 1 or 2 yard runs, like, they're tough 1 or 2 yard runs.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I know this, people don't want to hear this, but Jerome Ford's kind of outperforming Nick Chubb right now. And I think a lot of that is you look at great running backs over the history, and it takes a year or 2 years sometimes to get that footing back. And that's what I think Nick still looks tentative and scared sometimes. And that's not his fault or anybody's fault. I think it's just a matter of this guy really probably shouldn't have played football. A lot of people didn't think, and it's going to take a lot of time for him.
Well, and he's also at that age. It's kind of the elephant in the room that nobody really wants to talk about. He's kind of at that age where the running back starts to fall off too, though. I mean, we saw Le'Veon Bell was around this time, Todd Gurley around this time, age 28, where the wheels start falling off, and I think we might be seeing the beginning of the decline of Chubb. And I hate saying that. It's not something I want to say, but it's something I think's happening, especially with the injury that happened last year. I think, to your point of him getting his footing back, that mixed in with just the age factor, you get into your late 20s, it's basically you got another couple years maybe, and then you start to become potentially out of the league. And I don't think that's going to be the case with Chubb, but I start to see that little decline happening.
I'm going to put it more on the injury only because I think I could see your point. I'm not saying it's not valid, but I think it's more injury based because even when he caught that screen pass for 19 yards the other night, you saw him follow his blockers, and that looked like vintage Chubb. And he did have a run in the first half where, he followed his blockers. He was able to pick up 11 yards, and he looked like kind of explosive and, being patient but also effective, which is what's always made him so good.
Yeah, and Chubb's always going to give you the tough runs, even when he starts to decline a little bit. Whether that's happening now or not, he's still going to break a tackle or two. He's never going to be, first hit and done. It's going to take a gang tackle, or it's going to be a few yards, break a tackle or so. But yeah.
All right. Well, moving right along here, Jerry Jeudy wasn't the only one who set records. Jameis Winston. 497 passing yards, set the Browns record. Josh McCown's record actually was set in Baltimore in 2015 where he had 457 passing yards. And it's kind of funny because it's just very Browns with how many different quarterbacks they've gone through.
Those are the two.
The two journeymen, you could say, are their two all-time highs in passing. But Jameis Winston, to me, that was the full Jameis experience. Scott Van Pelt said it after the game, and it absolutely was. But talking to a buddy of mine, Sean, earlier this week, we both talked about it. It's probably time to give the guy an extension. And I know we've talked about this, we've hinted it, but they just possibly, under no circumstances at all whatsoever, can bring Deshaun Watson back next year. I mean, these guys don't believe in him. And I'm going to go on a little mini rant here because I heard, well, Jerry Jeudy was overpaid. He's not, he stinks. Okay, suddenly Jerry Jeudy has a real quarterback, looks good. This offensive line stinks. That's all I heard. This line's washed up. They're no good. Denver's pass rush was number one coming in. The Browns only gave up 2 sacks. Watson's fault. I mean, it just the list adds up and up. I heard Kevin Stefanski and
Elijah Moore was a bad trade.
Yeah, Elijah Moore was a bad trade. Guy, 8 catches, 111 yards when he
Cedric
gets scored.
Tillman, another wasted third-round wide receiver talent, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah,
that was another one. Andrew Berry can't draft a receiver, which Jerry's still out on that for the most part.
David Bell and Anthony Schwartz would have something to say about that.
Cedric Tillman. Well, hey, when David Bell got a chance last year, towards the end of the year, he wasn't horrible. I think he could be okay. I mean, he's probably time's ticking on him. He's just had too many injuries and stuff, but he did pretty well with Flacco. He had a couple key catches down. David Bell led them in catches in that playoff game last year. So, again, but then this year, David Bell goes out with another season-ending injury. But Cedric Tillman, now unfortunately he's hurt again. And then also you heard Ken Dorsey was not a good play caller. Kevin Stefanski, was losing the locker room. I mean, I can't say verbatim, but boy, I don't remember a 3-8 team playing that hard in a long, long time. Those guys were busting their tails on Monday night. And this is why I all think all bad roads lead back to him. Number 4, because I can't think of any other reason why suddenly this offense could literally not score 20 points in a game, was historically bad since the 1970 AFL-NFL merger. Now they're out here on Monday night throwing the thing around for 500 yards. I mean, who else can you blame?
Yeah, well, what's so funny about this year right now is that it's such a tale of two halves, and I'm talking about the season this time, because, we were looking at this season as one of the biggest disappointing seasons since a 2008 season, where we had all those high expectations after the 2007 year. The 2019 year where we traded for Odell Beckham and had all that excitement from Baker's rookie year. Very disappointing. 2021, we come off the playoff run, the first playoff win we've seen in our lifetime, and then we have another clunker of a year.
Baker's
this
shoulder,
was, this was going up there with one of the most disappointing Browns seasons of all time. And now since the Deshaun injury, this has been one of the most exciting, the last 4 weeks or so have been the most exciting football. I shouldn't say the most exciting, but it's been, compared to what we had the first half, this team goes out there, they're tackling hard, they're running hard routes. Jameis is moving up in the pocket. He's diving, for first downs. He's diving for touchdowns against the Steelers.
Yep.
It's one of the most fun teams to watch right now, and I'm having an absolute blast with it, and I wish this would have started, at week 1 of the season.
Well, and again, the reports coming out of camp and all that were that Jameis was better than Deshaun all year, but they just couldn't do it because of the money. But I wish, and I think it's the easy thing to say now, all Browns fans are saying it, but I truly do wish from the bottom of my heart that this move would have been made earlier, because this guy was so lost, so bad, and all the excuses that he had no weapons, the line was not any good, the coaching was garbage, all that's been put to bed, and everything is turning out to be his fault.
Yeah, when you look at it in the way that you put it, in terms of, obviously the Jerry Jeudy resurgence. I mean, David Njoku's been what he is the entire year. He really has been. And then,
he's got more opportunities in the red zone because quarterback trusts to throw those 50-50 balls. Deshaun wasn't throwing those because the ball didn't go past the line of scrimmage.
David Njoku, with all due fairness, is one of the most 50-50 players in terms of the easy passes. He's dropping them, and the hard catches he's catching. So I think he can be, for as reliable of, I guess, a player being able to be out on the field not due to injury, as reliable as he's been to be on the field consistently, he hasn't been as reliable when it comes to going his way. So I'm not gonna fault Deshaun, I guess, for not targeting him consistently, but
I am.
I know you blame Deshaun for everything.
Well, how could you not? When you watch what you've watched, I mean, to me, it's just hard not to blame the guy for the entire offense being a robust failure this year. It's all his fault. I'm sorry, I can't blame it on anybody else. I mean, maybe the only other excuse I could have is that Ken Dorsey didn't call plays with Watson, but I don't think it would have made that much of a difference. But I will say, since Jameis has taken over, I haven't heard any griping or whining about the play calling from Ken Dorsey, and I think, the guy's kind of resurged himself as looking like a pretty darn good offensive coordinator.
Yeah, and I think that goes to your point of where the season was in the first half of the year. I think this just kind of goes to, obviously we lose again to the Broncos. We lose again, but it's not nearly as negative as these other losses have been at all. I don't think when you look at this team from the outside looking in anymore, it's not all negative.
No, I don't think it is. The only thing I'll say was, and that's more defense related, they still did get blown out. The Jameis Brown did get blown out by the Saints, and that was bad. They did get blown out by the Chargers, and that was bad. But then you look at the Ravens, Steelers, and Broncos games, and those 3 games were more exciting than anything that Deshaun Browns had to offer the first half of the year.
Yeah.
I mean, they literally could not score 20 points. Now it feels like you sit down halfway through the second quarter and you're surprised if they don't have point,
Yeah.
I mean, they score so easily. But with Jameis does come the turnovers, but
comes the defensive scores as well.
Right.
We saw that on Monday night.
Guy will throw touchdown passes for both teams. That's just the way it goes. I mean, it's always been like that with him. But to me, I'd rather have that than someone who's not even willing to throw the ball more than 5 yards past the line of scrimmage.
100%. This goes back to either episode 1 or episode 2, of this podcast, where we said, if we're going to stink, can we be fun to watch? And that's exactly what we're getting.
Yep. They stink, but they're fun to watch.
They're fun to watch.
Yep, absolutely. But one more thing I want to hit on with Jameis. Okay, whether it's the Browns or it's some other team around the league who's going to need one, because there's going to be quite a few teams that are going to need one, this guy has absolutely earned himself as a stopgap opportunity next year. I just hope that it's us.
Yeah, I'm giving him a 2-year deal minimum. I think that gives you, if you can't get a quarterback in this upcoming class, it gives you another year to get one and have him have a year under Jameis. And either way, Jameis has clearly accepted the fact that he'll happily start and he'll happily back up just about anybody, honestly, to that point. So I'm giving him at least a 2-year deal. 2 years, probably. With the way he's been playing, you're going to be looking at maybe close to $20 million a year, I think.
You think that much?
I think 15 to 20 for a starter. I mean, look what Derek Carr got. Derek Carr got like 5 years, 150 or something ridiculous like that.
Yeah, I would hope that they could, Jameis, maybe you backload it because you're going to have the Deshaun money next year. So you give him his guaranteed money, but maybe put a lot of it in the second year. It's maybe the way they can structure it.
Yeah.
I'm no capologist.
Yeah, I'm not an expert by any means myself
but
either.
Again, I mean, these guys love playing for him. He's energized that locker room. He's more of a leader than Deshaun's ever been.
Yep.
I just, at this point, I don't see how you can't run it back with him because they are in a really bad spot. And I know the turnovers and all that's not pretty, but he gives them their best chance to win, and he's their best option because they're kind of screwed with the Deshaun thing.
And this is a completely different situation than it was last year. Last year, you could look at the 4-1 or 5-1 record of Deshaun and say, hey, Flacco, it was a fun run. The Flacco fever was awesome. Flacco mania was awesome, but you're still paying this guy a ton of money. He won for you that year, whether you want to admit it or not. Deshaun had won for us that year. We were paying him all that money. You kind of had to run it back. And now he didn't win for you at all this year. He played, to your point, he was the worst quarterback in the league this year. And now we've got a journeyman that steps in. And to your point, throwing for 300-plus yards just about every week, 20-plus points just about every week outside of the Saints week. And we're a fun team to watch again. And the team's rallying behind him. I agree 100% with you that we got to run it back with Jameis next year, no doubt.
Okay, so now let's move on real quick to this week. Browns-Steelers rematch of only 2 weeks ago. Steelers are going to be ready to play. They've they haven't lost to us in a regular season game at home since 2003. So this is a absolute house of horrors for the Browns. The only win they have down there is the playoff win with nobody in the stands.
Right.
So they're up against it this week. Make no mistake about it. How do you feel about going down into Pittsburgh this week in regards to the Browns' chances to win?
I never feel good about going into Pittsburgh with the Browns.
No, neither do I.
It's impossible to feel. It's impossible to feel good going into that stadium. To your point, with the track record that we have, I have a bad feeling that George Pickens. If any of you are listening that are bettors out there, take a George Pickens anytime touchdown, because that's my guarantee of the week. Probably is George Pickens getting in the end zone and talking his trash.
We've been pretty bad at those, and we'll get to that with me.
Yeah, we have been pretty bad at guarantees. But yeah, I don't feel good about it. I think Russ is going to be cooking, unfortunately. Hopefully Martin Emerson can have some type of good week. He hasn't had one what seems like all year.
He's had a rough year.
If I'm the Browns, I'm having Denzel Ward follow George Pickens around the entire field, because this might be Denzel Ward's best season of his entire career right now. I mean, he is completely, I feel like around the league, I haven't seen nationally him get a ton of love, and I don't think that's by any means the national media hating him by any means.
It's because we stink.
It's just because we stink, and he's going a little bit under the radar. It's like the 2013 Joe Hayden year, where he was like hands down a top 3 corner in the league with Sherman and Revis. But yeah, Denzel Ward's having an amazing year. I'm having him follow Pickens around. I think that's just about the only chance we have. I think Pickens is going to be a huge factor in this game, and I don't feel confident right now.
Yeah, neither do I, but I don't think they're going to get blown out by any means. I think they'll stay in the game for about a half, and then Pittsburgh pulls away.
It depends on how the first half goes offensively, I think, for us. If Jameis throws 2 picks in the first half, I think this could get
ugly.
I think it could get ugly fast. But yeah, I think it could get ugly fast if Jameis throws a couple picks early, has a couple turnovers. But if we're staying in the game, I still don't feel comfortable with what he just did in Denver. I don't feel comfortable with the ball in his hands, with the game on the line. I texted a few buddies of mine when we got the ball back
Monday night.
And this was ball back Monday night, and I texted them. I said, I think we're going to see some Jameis buffoonery right here, which is quite frankly exactly what we saw. Because it's just one of those, he's a gunslinger. He's going to take the chance. And with the game on the line against good defenses, Denver, this week it's going to be Pittsburgh, I don't feel confident with it.
Yeah, I mean, when he had the game on the line in the snow in Cleveland, there was a lot of running the ball, and those elements were anybody's chance, really.
It's a good point.
But, even playing field, they're not calling for any kind of blizzard in Pittsburgh this Sunday.
Yeah.
So I would imagine you're right, but maybe the Lord will deliver him back from those pick sixes if you saw the post game.
I hope so.
Yeah. No, I mean, his entertaining, his charisma, his leadership, that's all why part of the contract extension too.
Oh, yeah.
But real quick, like we said, I don't feel great about it, but you know what? Go Browns. It's been fun. And like you said, they stink, but they're entertaining, which is better than what they did with Watson. They stunk, and they were miserable to watch play the ball game.
Yeah, and they're easy to root for now. All of a sudden, they're easier to root for. So,
Yep. Easy,
let's go Brownies.
Easier. All right, well, let's get to the college football recap. And, of course, I got a lot to say about the game that I guaranteed a 21-point Buckeye win. Well, I'll look right into the camera. I'm sorry. I was dead wrong on that, and I should have known better. Ryan Day can't beat Michigan no matter what. If there was 1 year that he was going to do it, this would have been the year. Michigan had graduated 18 people off their national title team. They had a ton go to the NFL. A lot of other guys leave the program. Will Johnson, who's supposed to be a top 10 draft pick, wasn't playing. The big tight end, whose name's escaping me right now, wasn't playing. And Ohio State just could not get it done. Again, I was dead wrong. I'll be the first to admit it. Once again, I'm going to put that this game falls mainly on three people for me. One, Will Howard. I mean, the whole reason they got rid of Kyle McCord was he turned the ball over too much in big games last year. And what'd you do? Well, against Michigan, you threw a red zone, basically pick six because you took it back to the one. Then you throw another costly interception. I mean, Will Howard was not good. Ryan Day, just because the matter, all you do all year, all you did was talk about how much this game meant to you. And I said it on the podcast last week. He said it was the most, biggest, toughest thing in his life besides his own father's passing. All you did, and, we're going to beat Michigan. Oh, you cross out the M's everywhere on campus, this, that. You make a big deal of it, and you lose again. And then let's blame Chip Kelly. The one area of talent that Michigan actually had upper hand against the Buckeyes was the defensive tackles. So what do? You try to run Quinshon Junkins and Travion Henderson right up the gut the entire game, and they go absolutely nowhere. You knew without Seth McLaughlin, your All-American center, you paid a lot of money to get him from Alabama. You knew it was going to be tough. So what do, Chip? You run the ball the whole game. I mean, come on. I mean, Michigan didn't play great. They did enough of the little things to win. I mean, but this was also a lot of Ohio State beating themselves. I mean, the way they played was horrid to see.
Yeah, it was horrible. And to your point, with them running the ball up the gut constantly into Michigan's only strength, really, in terms of talent versus talent, position to position, when Ohio State has probably the best receiving core in the country,
right?
And their number one corner in probably all of college football is out.
Will Johnson,
and you're not really daring them at all.
No.
On any big plays. Like, did Jeremiah Smith even get involved in that game? It didn't seem like I saw the ball in his hands at all.
Believe it or not, the one touchdown they scored, it was him.
Okay.
But yeah, no, your point being, you spread the ball out. You had Carnell Tate, you had Jeremiah Smith, you had Emeka Ibuka, and they had no way. And Joel Klatt kept saying on the television broadcast, they can't keep up. Spread the ball out. And what do? They do the exact opposite. Chip Kelly, I don't know what possessed him to call the game he did, but boy, was it horrendous. I mean, it was downright awful.
Yeah, it was I'll tell you, from my perspective, me not being an Ohio State or Michigan fan, it was a fun game for me to watch. I just typically tend to root for all of the upsets if it's not Notre Dame involved, but it was a fun game to watch from that perspective. And what did you think? So when Jack Sawyer had that pick at the goal line, I thought the game was about to be over because their tight end was wide open in the end zone. Their quarterback, who's escaping me because I know they rotate a couple guys here and there.
Yeah, well, the quarterback who played was Davis. Oh, my goodness, I can't think of his name.
Regardless, yeah, tight end wide open, and instead of doing a lollipop, it was kind of like the Jameis interception at the very end of the game.
Yes.
Instead of lollipop,
Davis Warren,
okay. Instead of lollipopping it over I guess, for lack of a better term, the spy, but Jack Sawyer, I guess, was supposed to rush on that play but realized what was happening. It was a great defensive play. Great defensive play from Sawyer. I thought the game was over when the ball was in the air because Michigan was going to catch it to basically put it away. And then I thought the game was over when Sawyer picked it off because I thought, okay, now here come the Buckeyes.
And they went 3 and out.
And they went 3 and out.
Yeah. So, I mean, to put up 10 points against that Michigan team, and literally Davis Warren, 9 of 16, 62 yards, 2 interceptions.
Man.
Now, the other thing that bothered me was how much Michigan was able to run the ball successfully. I mean, they ran for 4.2 a pop. Khalil Mullings, 32 carries, 116 yards, and a touchdown. I mean, they barely threw the ball in a modern college football game and came into your house and beat you.
Yeah, but even that's not even that crazy efficient on the ground.
No,
like really at all. It's just they just kept pounding the rock. They trusted their game plan. You could tell Michigan went into that game basically saying, if we limit the turnovers, we have a chance.
Mm-hmm.
You could tell that's exactly what their game plan was offensively.
Well, and I'll give them credit because you know what, Sharon Moore, he doesn't make as big of a deal as the game as Ryan Day does. But Sharon Moore had his team ready to play for the game more than Ryan Day did. I mean, Ryan Day's team did most of the toughest they were all day was when the clock hit 0.
Yeah.
And they wanted to defend the flag getting planted, which I do appreciate as an Ohio State fan. But I mean, it's not a good look when you're lazy and lackadaisical for the entire length of the ball game. Then you want to play tough guy after the game. Come on now.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I agree. And to your point, so I saw a couple things going on X that about flag planting. What is your stance on flag planting when it comes to college football?
You know what? I love these rivalries. And I'll tell you, for me, the intensity seemed to go away for a little while. In some of them, you didn't see it. But boy, was it back this year. I mean, it was back in full force. And if it's going to add to the rivalries, I'm all for it.
I'm all for it, too. I think it adds spice. I think it adds. And you know what? I think a lot of the commentators have to act like they hate it.
Yeah.
Because there was, you never want to see this scuffle after the game. This is, two prestigious programs act like it or whatever. They love it.
Yeah.
It gives them something to talk about.
And it's good television.
It's great television. Absolutely.
It's great television. And I'll tell you, the bottom line is, like I said, to me, maybe this is my perception. I was wrong. I don't know.
Okay.
But it seems to me that like the intensity of some of these games went away for a little while, and it was back in full force all around the country. I mean, you saw North Carolina State, Arizona State. Obviously, the big one that we saw locally here with Ohio State and Michigan. I mean, the intensity was everywhere, all around the country, and it was fun.
Yeah, it was an absolute blast. It seemed like every rivalry you turned on, there was a scuffle after the game, or a scuffle during the game at least.
Right.
The only one I honestly can't think of that's relatively a big rivalry. It's not like a named rivalry really. Was Notre Dame USC, just two big programs, and there wasn't really any scuffle outside of there was a USC player that there was a scrum on the goal line. USC player tried turning one of the Notre Dame linemen's knees a little bit, and Notre Dame lineman gave him a full fist to the helmet, which typically you never see that. Really, well,
No.
you do. Well, it's one of the dumbest things you can do. You'll break your hand more than actually hurt the guy. But yeah, rivalries are back in college football. It was a lot of fun. To your point, I feel like specifically Ohio State, Michigan, I feel like the intensity was always there, but a lot of the national media didn't look at it as intense when Ohio State went on that 10 to 15 year run. They're, okay, Ohio State's going to run it back. Ohio State's going to win again. Ohio State's going to win again. Michigan finally turned the tide, won a couple straight. Ohio State players were like, okay, we're not, these seniors specifically
have never beaten Michigan.
Never beaten Michigan. So this year I think was more so the Michigan seniors wanted to sweep and the Ohio State seniors wanted to stop it. They wanted to get one win before they graduated, and
they didn't get it. So this leads us back to the Ryan Day conversation. So if you've been following along the podcast, I've made it clear I'm not a huge Ryan Day fan. For the matter, he can't seem to win the big game. But after he beat Indiana and Penn State, I kind of hopped back on his wagon a little bit. I want to unhitch myself from that wagon again because it's frustrating. It's very, very frustrating. And again, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, Sean, and he had mentioned to me, he said, my biggest concern is if they get rid of Ryan Day, who is out there to get? And the name that I mentioned to him was Matt Campbell. He was not a fan of that one, but I am a fan of that one. And I know you like Matt Campbell, but is Matt Campbell is that too high profile for him? You think he could handle Ohio State? I mean, there is a hell of a difference between Iowa State and Ohio State.
So here's my stance on Matt Campbell. I love him as a coach. I think I had brought it up to you the other day about him as being a potential under the radar candidate for the Ohio State job. I absolutely love him as a coach, what he's done with that Iowa State program. I think if it's not Vrabel for Ohio State, they got to put all their eggs into the Matt Campbell basket if Ryan Day is gone. If they keep him, obviously they keep him and they try to run it back and see what happens. Matt Campbell, a dude from Ohio, so I'm sure this rivalry means a ton to him. I don't know if he grew up an Ohio State fan or not. I don't know all the details on that. But a lot of people that are Ohio State fans want somebody from the area, somebody who's passionate about the rivalry, passionate about getting Ohio State back to being, maybe the lead favorite for a national title, because it's been if they don't do it this year, it'll be over a decade since they've done it.
Right.
And I think Matt Campbell would be the perfect person for the job for Ohio State. And honestly, if I were a Buckeyes fan, I'd prefer him to Vrabel.
Okay, well here's my response to that. I think the job might be a little too big for him, but the other thing is a lot of Ohio State fans want Vrabel. From what I've been told, and hearing a few things here and there from people who've close to Vrabel and his personal camp, Mike Vrabel really doesn't have much interest in coaching in college. I think Mike Vrabel's been in the NFL for over a decade now. He's an NFL guy. He wants to stay there. So if Mike Vrabel doesn't want the job, then the only thing that's tough for Ohio State is you have this coach who's underperforming, not getting the job done, but there's a $37 million you'd have to pay him to walk away. And are the boosters willing to pay $37 million? Are they that upset? The people who are writing the checks and cutting the checks, are they that upset that $37 million they're going to pay him to walk away? I don't know.
I don't think they will. I also saw another candidate, which would honestly break my heart.
Marcus Freeman?
Marcus Freeman.
My buddy and I discussed that one too.
That would break my heart as a Notre Dame fan. I think with how young he is, with how it seems like he gets that locker room to buy into him, I think he's a great head coach, and I want him for the Irish for the long term. And I'd be absolutely heartbroken if Marcus Freeman. But gun to my head, I think Day's here next year regardless. Even if they're a first round exit, I think he's here regardless.
It's just that buyout price is so high, and the boosters are probably. I mean, it is Ohio State, so the money's there, right?
And he's been a double-digit winner every year he's been there, outside of the COVID year, which they only played 5 games.
But that's not good enough at Ohio State.
If they run the table. Can we stop with this whole narrative of Ohio State having higher expectations than all these other schools? Give me a break. You guys have won 2 natties in 20 years, and you act like you're Alabama or Georgia. Give it a rest.
It's not good.
We have higher standards here. Give me a break. He wins 10 wins every year, gets to the playoffs. Only one team can win it. Oh, but he didn't beat Michigan. Oh, he went to the national title game and lost. Get him out of here. He didn't beat Michigan. Give me a break. Give me a break.
Well, okay.
It's a rivalry game. If Kevin Stefanski gets swept by the Steelers, I'm not calling for his job.
It's different in college.
It's ridiculous.
It's different in college.
Come on.
No, listen, with the talent that they have and the amount of 5-stars they have, you or I could coach them up to beat Northwestern. Come on now.
Not Michigan.
I'm not. No. But, no, well, Ryan Day, he can't get that done. I mean, but the bottom line is with Ohio State's clear and decisive talent gap, it doesn't matter. Anybody can coach them up to beat Northwestern and beat, Minnesota or what have you. I mean, this is the bottom line. He doesn't win the games of consequence.
He has 2 top 5 wins this year.
Yeah, I guess I'll give him that, but
granted, one's an Indiana team that nobody really saw coming out of nowhere, but he has 2 top 5 wins this year. He lost, honestly, I'll say it was a meaningless game. They were in the playoffs regardless. The only thing it cost them was a Big Ten championship game that they were probably they already lost to that team anyway.
Yeah, so that would have been a chance for revenge.
Okay.
So I would have rather
you play your cards right, you'll face them in the playoffs.
We're not going to get there. Ryan Day's coach of the team.
Oh, my God. Give me a break. Give me a break.
But listen, back to your point of how this whole thing started. They could pull on Marcus Freeman's heartstrings and pull the alumni. And Ohio State does have the endless money. So if things go south, I would and they decide that they want to pay the $37 million price tag to fire Ryan Day, Marcus Freeman would be one of the first calls I would make.
Yeah, probably. And to your point, like it would be if I was Ohio State, I would call him and see where the interest is. I would.
Yeah, because there is
I don't want them to.
There's something to be said about a guy coaching where he went to college and all that. And Marcus Freeman, maybe that is his dream job. Nobody knows. I mean, he could be happy at Notre Dame. And to your point, maybe Ryan Day will pull it together because even when he did lose to Michigan, if it wasn't for a damn kicker a few years ago, would have beat Georgia.
Which also, if it wasn't for his kicker this past time, you might beat Michigan.
Yeah, Jaden Fielding, I don't know what happened. The guy had a great year. Great year, and then he missed 2 kicks. But again, the Ryan Day thing is something that we will definitely monitor and keep an eye on because I think it's interesting. But I like you said, like the price tag is pretty high, and when you look at it from a non-Ohio State point of view, I guess he does win a good amount of games. And
yeah, of course. And the minute that he gets fired, he will have teams knocking at his door. And I'm not talking just like Wake Forests that would be knocking at his door. I'm talking like Florida potentially, LSU potentially if they give up on Brian Kelly. Like legit named programs calling at his door to see if there's any interest there. I think you guys look at the Michigan game too high. Like if they were 8-4 or 7-4 and they went in and they lost to Michigan every year, I think it'd be a different story. But you guys are a playoff team every single year. When you make the playoffs, anything can happen. I don't know. I think you guys overreact to his losses too much. I actually heard a rumor today that there's potential that Ohio State reaches out to Urban Meyer again. Do you think there's any truth to that?
I really hope not. I can't stand Urban Meyer.
I think everybody hates Urban Meyer except for Urban Meyer.
Yeah, I can't stand the guy. There are people in Ohio State who love Urban Meyer and who would bring him back in a heartbeat. I can't stand that guy.
Yeah, I can't stand him either. I think he's just one of those guys that when he gets sick of something, he just makes up a medical excuse. And then when he gets another job offer that he likes, and you know what? Feeling healthy again.
He's a horrible guy. But we don't need to go. He's a bad guy. But Kevin, to your point about overreacting and Ryan Day's losses, listen, I can understand. Maybe I'll give him the benefit of the doubt when they lost to Michigan, when Michigan was 3 and they were 2, or when Michigan was 5 and they were 2 at the Big House. But this year, come on, there's no excuse. This was a horrible Michigan team. Horrible Michigan.
Marcus Freeman lost to Northern Illinois this year. I'm not calling for his head. Would you rather lose to Michigan or Northern Illinois?
I'd rather just run the table.
Well, of course, obviously. But you got to pick one, buddy. You're losing to a bigger name school. Although I will say, Indiana took care of business against Michigan.
Don't remind me. I know Kurt Signetti and the boys. And yeah, Will Howard, you looked real cool stomping out your cigarette, throwing interceptions against Michigan.
Oh, that's what I would do. I was acting like when I was watching that game, I was cheering for Michigan because I wanted to see the upset. I was acting like I was throwing out the cigarette and stomping on it. I was doing the Google me. The Google me thing. Boy. Will Howard was on his high horse.
I didn't watch that game with you. Huh? All right. Well, you want to talk about these conference championships a little bit?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because that has big time playoff implications.
Well, let's start with the one I guess most local to where we are, the Big Ten title. 1 Oregon against 3 Penn State. Simple question for you: Penn State have any shot?
Yeah. I think they absolutely have a shot in this game. Now, I don't think they do it. I would give them probably a 20 to 25% chance. Like, it's by no means zero. I'm picking Oregon just because of their track record. Obviously beat a great Ohio State team, who that Ohio State team beat Penn State already. So I'm a fan of Oregon this year. I think they're obviously a great team. They're the only undefeated team left, and I'm going Ducks.
Yeah, I think the Ducks roll. I don't even think it's close.
Really?
I think the Ducks absolutely roll them. James Franklin is actually worse than Ryan. Talk about a guy who never wins the big game. I mean, he never, ever, ever wins the big game. This is a big game. James Franklin's going to come up small again, and Oregon rolls.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. And so I think, you know what I think? I think it's going to be close for about the first 3 quarters. And then there's going to be no adjustments made on Penn State's side. And the stuff that hasn't worked for Oregon, they're going to make the adjustments, and they're going to end up winning by a touchdown and a half.
Talk about a coach that everybody. How about Dan Lanning? That guy's just been incredible at Oregon.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Absolutely been great.
All right. Big 12, and this is weird because
Before we move on to the Big 12 real quick, what implication, how far does Penn State drop if they lose this game, or if they get blown out, how far do they drop in the standings, do you think? Do you think they drop past a Notre Dame? Because Notre Dame's basically sitting no matter what between 5 and 7. It depends on how these games go.
Yeah, I mean, that's the toughest thing for Notre Dame is because they're not in a conference. It's always been like that. No matter what system, whether it was the BCS, the 4-team playoff, Notre Dame's always sitting idle at this time, and so they kind of just have to wait and see. I would assume Penn State would probably drop past Notre Dame if they got blown out.
Yeah, you'd think, honestly, if you look at it, they'll probably drop past Notre Dame regardless if they lose, because Penn State's at 3, the Irish are at 4. That basically means Penn State would have to, if they lose, they just stay at 3 to not drop past the Irish. So, yeah, I could see them. Do you think they drop past the Buckeyes, though? That's a good question, because they, at that point, would be 11-2 with a conference championship, so technically better, but Ohio State also beat them.
Yeah, I think Ohio State's head-to-head win, and the fact that you pointed out Ohio State does have a head-to-head win over them and Indiana, so I think they would probably, if they got blown out, they could have the potential to fall past the Bucks.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, Big 12. How about this? 16 Iowa State versus 15 Arizona State. Arizona State being this conference alignment's got me all messed up still.
Yeah, it bothers me a lot. I'm not going to lie.
Arizona State in the Big 12. But anyway, Arizona State out of nowhere. Good for them.
Yeah.
And Iowa State, Matt Campbell, there he is again.
Yep.
Coming up. But do either of these two teams have a shot, you think, to get in this thing?
Well, whoever wins is going to end up being in.
You think so?
In the college football playoff?
Right.
Yeah, because it's conference. So the top 4 seeds are the top 4 ranked conference winners.
Right.
And then the 12 seed, even if they're not ranked, the 12 seed goes to the 5th conference winner.
Okay, so this game's huge.
It's a huge, whoever wins gets in.
All right, who do you like?
I'm going to be rooting for the Iowa State Cyclones. I think Rocco Becht is going to have a good game, quarterback for them. Jaden Higgins and Jalen, I'm forgetting what his, Jalen Reed, I want to say. Their receivers are pretty good. They got a nice little backfield of like some thunder and lightning. Abu Sama, good shifty back. Carson Hansen, I want to say, good power back. They kind of split carries there. I think they're going to come at him with an even attack. I'm actually going to pick the Cyclones in this game.
I am too, and the only reason why is because Iowa State's played in big games the last few years. Arizona State hasn't played in a big game in like ages.
I was looking at that today, actually, because I wasn't too familiar with their schedules, and Iowa State, I think their resume is actually a little bit better than Arizona State. That's the reason I'm picking them.
Okay, here's the big one that everybody's going to have their eyes on.
Huge.
Outside the Big Ten, 5 Georgia against 2 Texas. Georgia Tech was an outstanding 8 overtime game that I actually had the chance of watching on Friday night. That was outstanding.
I was so disappointed I couldn't watch that game.
But either way, I think Texas wins this game.
Again?
Georgia has not really impressed me that much this year. This is not, we talked about it a couple pods ago. This is not a great Georgia team. It's a darn good Georgia team. But I have a couple questions about them. I think Texas wins.
Okay, so the only thing that's holding me up, and I'll actually probably be cheering for Texas in that game, but the only thing that's holding me up from picking them right now is that it's so hard to beat a team twice in a year. Remember, this is an SEC schedule now.
Right,
Texas
right.
and Georgia did face each other earlier this year. They beat Georgia. I think it's hard to beat a team twice in 1 year, and I could see Kirby having the boys ready to play this weekend.
Well, the other thing that I want to throw in there, a fact that I think matters, is the game is played in Atlanta. So this is basically a Georgia home game. So Texas is going to be on the road. The SEC title game is always played in Atlanta. So for me, this is going to be tough for Texas. With all that still being said, I do like the Longhorns to do it.
I'm gonna go Bulldogs in this game. I just have a feeling that Georgia's gonna go in there and Kirby's gonna have them ready to play and running on all cylinders. I think Georgia's gonna pull this one out.
Okay. All right. How about SMU now a member of the Atlantic Coastal Conference, even though they play in Dallas.
The 8th-ranked Southern Methodist.
Against 17 Clemson. I think it's hard not to go with SMU here. I mean, you know what? It'll basically be a Clemson home game, again, being in Charlotte and with these conferences. I mean, boy, it's hard to find a neutral location for these teams to play now because they're from all over the country and all over America.
Which actually you'd think it should make it easier to find a neutral location, but
everything would have to be in Chicago with the way some of these conferences are. But anyhow, 8 SMU against 17 Clemson for the Atlantic Coastal Conference Championship game. I like the Mustangs here.
See, this is two straight we're going to disagree on. I think I'm going to go Clemson in this one. I trust Dabo more. He's been in these situations more. He's going to coach correctly. A lot of these I'm picking the known versus the unknown.
Right.
And I know that Clemson's got a great coach, and I know they've showed up in big moments before. Granted, obviously this was years ago with the Trevor Lawrence, Deshaun Watson teams.
Back when Deshaun Watson was good. No,
back when he was good, yeah. But I'm gonna go Clemson in this one, and I think unfortunately that's gonna hold SMU from the playoffs. Unfortunately.
You think if they lose, they're out, huh?
I do.
Yeah,
the fact that they put Alabama at 11 sealed everything for me that they're gonna find a way to get that team into the playoffs.
Yeah, you're probably right. All right, and finally, the Mountain West Conference Championship game. UNLV running Rebels against the Boise State Broncos. Boise State, I remember back in the days with the BCS, they were a factor every year. They kind of went off the map for a little, and lo and behold, about a decade later, here come the Broncos.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually like Boise State in this game. I just think that what their track record kind of speaks for themselves. I've never really been a huge believer in the Rebels. And UNLV, very weird position for them to find themselves in a chance to actually get into the playoffs this year. And, for a team that's typically around 500 year in and year out, for them to be ranked at this time of year and fighting for a playoff spot, it's been obviously a very successful season for them regardless, I think. I just think Boise State comes out firing, and I'm giving the edge to the Broncos in the Mountain West.
I'm going to agree with you. I'll go Broncos too. And I don't ever remember really hearing about UNLV football. I mean, remember back in the glory days with Jerry Tarkanian and their basketball team, but their football team, this is unknown.
Yeah.
So, those are the big conference championship games, and we'll have our eyes peeled on everything. But like we said, this is a lot going on here with NFL, college football. We're at that time of the year. It's really actually a lot of fun to do this right now because we have so much to get in an hour.
Oh, absolutely. It's a ton of fun to go over. And one last thing I kind of wanted to touch on when it comes to college football, you're obviously looking at these teams seem like locks right now. We're looking at Oregon, Texas, Penn State, Notre Dame, Georgia, Ohio State, Tennessee, and Indiana. We're looking at probably 8 teams that are locks right now for the playoffs. Other ones being the ACC winner, Big 12 winner, and Mountain West. So we're looking at basically one spot up for grabs. And I think right now, Miami kind of got screwed. Because they just kind of gave it to Alabama. And, when you're looking at, granted, Miami hasn't lost to good teams. They also haven't really beaten good teams, but they're sitting at 10-2. They've got a great quarterback at the helm. I kind of wanted to see Cam Ward get a shot in the playoff. But also, if you're going to give it to an SEC team, if you're going to have that bias, what's holding you back from picking Ole Miss? Based off of what the similar teams that they've faced throughout the years, I saw there was a post. The same teams, when you're looking at competitive or comparing teams that each Alabama and Ole Miss have faced, Ole Miss has beaten them by more points and lost by less. So I think when you're putting it that way, I don't know why it's not Ole Miss. I mean, I know why, but I don't football wise.
Right. No, because there's always the Crimson Tide bias, as we know.
Yep.
But okay, I don't know. Did they play head to head? Is that the only reason I could think of?
They have not played head to head.
They didn't. Usually they do, but now with so many teams in these mega conferences, you don't play everybody.
Oh, of course, head to head. You know how I feel about head to head. I think it should be a huge determination in how teams are ranked. If it's same records and you have the win over the other one, I just think it should be as simple as you're ranked ahead of that team.
Right.
But yeah, unfortunately, they haven't faced each other this year. So
because again, the mega conferences, you don't play everybody in your conference now because you don't have a chance to.
Right, and the other team in that mix would have been South Carolina, but to your point right now, Alabama beat South Carolina head to head. They should have the edge over them.
Right.
So
yeah. So South Carolina did have that big win against Clemson, and like I said, I think Miami kind of did get screwed too. because they only have 2 losses, but clearly they value the SEC over the ACC.
Yeah, they value the schedule. I think that's as simple as that. I don't want to be too broad when I say SEC bias because I feel like that just is basically saying we're putting this team in just because of the conference. But I think they are comparing schedules played, which I think is why Georgia's so highly ranked with 2 losses. I saw they have, I think it was a top 3 hardest schedule in the nation. They're sitting at 10-2 with the conference championship to play. They're obviously a top 6, 7 school in the nation, so obviously should have the edge over other 2-loss teams like Ohio State, Tennessee, teams like that.
Right,
so
right.
It'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out this weekend. Obviously, a lot that is kind of ambiguous right now, which I think makes this weekend a lot of fun. Especially
it does.
Especially with how many playoff spots are up for grabs.
I couldn't agree more because we've never gone through this before. So just the novelty of having a new system in place and the way that things are going to play out, I can't wait.
I can't wait either. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I can't wait because we'll be in Pennsylvania for that. We'll be in Pennsylvania all day Saturday, getting ready to pregame Sunday morning for Browns Steelers.
Yes, sir.
And I can't wait to sit around all day and watch these games on Saturday.
It'll be a lot of fun. All right, well, we're going to wrap things up tonight talking about our Cleveland Cavaliers, and they finally did it. They finally beat the Boston Celtics. And I know what the naysayers are going to say. No Jaylen Brown. Don't care. We didn't have a lot of our guys the first time.
Yeah.
And Kristaps Porzingis was back for this matchup.
Yep.
And as you pointed out, Kevin, to me earlier this week, and I'll give you your credit for, we had a big-time Donovan takeover, and that is fun to watch.
Yeah, it seems like it's kind of the first one that we've seen all year, really, in which he's taken over the last 3-4 minutes themselves. Because we've seen, Darius Garland's had his turn. It seems like Evan Mobley's had a couple huge baskets. Jared Allen, even Ty Jerome at times has had his moments to take over a ball game, and it seemed like Donovan was kind of playing backseat, letting these guys get their confidence up. And then this was such a big game that you knew we had to have. I wouldn't call it a must-win because the season was obviously by no means on the line, but in terms of how the national media and how I think other NBA teams look at the Cavs, I think they needed this one.
I kind of called it a must-win last week on last week's pod when we were talking. We had Alex here with us, and you guys were like, well, if we don't do, I go, no, I think they got to win it. And now looking back, aren't you glad they did, right?
Oh, I'm so happy they won.
Yeah.
So happy they won, especially the debate was even on that undefeated streak and when they lost to the Celtics, they're going to be a regular season team. They just can't get over that Celtics hump. Well, we overcame another double-digit deficit against Boston in Cleveland. This is 2 times in 2 years they've done this now. And, there's just something about when Boston comes to Cleveland, I've noticed. The Cavs just play well. They play good basketball. Right. The Celtics are always going to go on that run. They're always going to go on a run. It's always going to be at some point probably a double-digit deficit that you're going to have to overcome just with how efficient that team can be from beyond the arc and just how efficient they run their offense. But, the Cavs played another great game, and it was phenomenal to see them get that huge win over Boston.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just praying to God that we don't see the Hawks come playoff time.
The one team they can't beat, huh? Out of everybody.
Both their loss, 2 out of 3 losses were to
and that was I was wrong on just about everything that came out of my mouth on last week's pod. Auburn, Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan. I said the Cavs will roll into that matchup, sweeping the Hawks on Wednesday and Friday around Thanksgiving. Another thing I was wrong on. But that one I'm going to defend myself a little bit. I don't think anybody saw the Hawks giving us maybe splitting it at worst, but not the sweep.
I was just going to say, you thought maybe you would lose the one in Atlanta. But the thing is, so it was Wednesday night, I want to say, last week, where it was Atlanta in Cleveland.
Yes.
And
the
Cavs were up by like 16 points, it seemed like, in the first 7 minutes of the game. I was like, okay, yeah, off and rolling. I guess we'll worry about Atlanta in Atlanta. And I think the Cavs might have had that mindset themselves because they definitely took their foot off the gas.
Yeah, and then Friday in Atlanta, they just did not play well. Maybe the guys were out, Thanksgiving hangover. I don't know. Too much turkey, too much, couple too many beers on Thanksgiving. I don't know. But then Sunday they came ready to play, and again, no Jaylen Brown, fine, whatever. we didn't have a lot of guys when we went there the first time this go around. And like I said, Kristaps was back for that game.
Yeah, which I think he's a bigger mismatch than just about anybody on that team, even when it comes to Tatum, because Tatum's going to do his thing. And Jaylen Brown, I think we actually played Jaylen Brown pretty well when we faced them. It's Kristaps that when he's in the paint, it's hard to get a layup over him. It's hard when Evan Mobley's guarding Jason Tatum. It's hard to get somebody to match up on Kristaps. I think he's a tougher matchup than just about anybody on that team for this squad.
Yeah, absolutely. And like we said, if you look at these matchups, that because they're the top two teams in the East and they're significantly ahead of everybody else, they are going to be scrutinized so heavily. So it is really important that you play well, even in a loss. But down 12 to come back and get that win. Donovan leading the charge was awesome to see. And again, these guys just keep rolling, and it's fun to watch, fun to see. And you know what? I have no reason to believe that they won't be 1 or 2 in the East. And if they're not at this point, I'm going to be pretty disappointed as a fan, honestly. I have to admit that.
I will be too.
They need to be 1 or 2, I think.
I 100% agree. And I think at some point, we had said this, I think last week or maybe 2 weeks ago, but the Knicks are going to go on a run at some point. I don't know when it's going to happen. They're going to go on a run. That team's going to start clicking, and the Cavs have to hold off on that lead that they have. I think we're going to be playing 1 and 2 with Boston the entire year. I just hope that we maintain, to your point, that 1 or 2.
And right now, that would be my guess for the 3 seed. And like you commented last week, Miami, maybe worry about them. I'm not worried about them, but I know there is historical data there to support your claim of being worried about.
Yeah, it's kind of the same. It's kind of the same reason that I'm picking Clemson over SMU. It's one of those that I know what I know about that team. I know that they're a physical team, and I know that they're a tough team, and they're a tough team to beat come playoff time. They've proven that before. They upset the Bucks a few years back, and that is a team that worries me come playoff time.
Yeah, absolutely. And Cavs coming up. They took care of business against the Wizards.
Yeah, they won by, I think it was like 32.
Yeah, they took care
30
of
something. I saw
took care of business against the Wizards. Now I do know. That was an NBA Cup game, but I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on that. I don't really understand how that whole thing works.
Still not a fan of the Cup.
I don't know if they have a Cup game Friday. I guess not. I don't know if they were eliminated from it. I do know that their next game is Saturday against Charlotte at 1 o'clock. That's got to be a win. No excuses, especially off this many days rest.
Yep.
So, like we said, a lot going on in the football world of things, but the Cavs are definitely keeping us interested on them because they just keep rolling.
They
a little bump in the road against the ATL, but everybody else just okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just okay. So I think that'll just about wrap it up for this week's show.
Yeah, I think that'll just about do it. Thank you again for joining us here. For Jerome, I'm Kevin. Please comment on this episode. Please tweet at us. Please engage with us. Again, our Twitter, our X is at CLE Sports Realm. Questions, arguments, feel free to agree, disagree. Please leave a comment on Spotify.
Or YouTube.
Please leave a comment on Spotify, YouTube. And we definitely appreciate the notifications. Give us a follow on both platforms. It helps us grow, expand, and bring more content.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have noticed we have been getting some commentary from people, and we appreciate that. So thank you to anybody who's commented, giving us the thumbs up. The boys appreciate it here.
Oh, yeah.
And like we said, keep those comments coming because believe it or not, I do go through and read every single one of them.
Oh, yeah, we all do.
So, all right. Well, that'll just about do it for this week's pod. For Derek, for Kevin, for myself, thanks a lot. Take it easy. Peace out. We'll see you next week.
Go Browns.